Our protagonist found himself transported into the body of the Demon King within the world of a game in which he had reached a level no one else had ever achieved. He was on the verge of being dragged into a war over food, a war in which he was destined to be defeated by the main character. So, instead of engaging in that battle, he ordered the army leaders to halt all preparations and chose to secure food through farming and land reclamation. Will our Demon King succeed by relying on his knowledge of the game and his past life experience in agriculture? Will he be able to convince the demons of his plan? That's what we'll find out in today's story. Our story begins with Kim Jang-chul, an ordinary graduate student in Korea, or at least, he used to be, until he suddenly awoke to find himself in the body of his favorite game's supreme overlord, the Demon King, Kratos. The game, titled Blood Vetras, revolves around the return of an ancient hero from slumber to stand against the world's evils. Chul's thoughts are interrupted by the entrance of a servant calling out to him, revealing himself to be Zephyros, a level 15 commander, who informs Chul, now Kratos, that preparations for the invasion are finally complete. At that, Asarath, the bloodthirsty prince at level 534, remarks that their hunger will soon be sated. The Ice Queen Serki, level 531, adds that their land has turned barren due to tragedy, forcing them to devour their own kind. Then Hartok, the Duke of Mist at level 555, declares that their enemies will be reduced to mere footnotes in history. Baal, Tyrant of the Blackstone and level 539, follows, saying their foes will become nothing more than meals. But Kratos' booming voice cuts through the conversation, demanding that the Demon King's armies listen. He declares that this war must come to an end, by his command, as the Demon King. He orders them to abandon all thoughts of invasion, and to take up farming instead of fighting. The army commanders are stunned, enraged, branding him insane and irrational. Yet Kratos raises his voice even further, growing so intense that silence falls upon them. He wasn't doing this out of goodwill, but out of fear of Mukongji, level 9999, who might hunt him down and kill him. Chul recalls his past, when he entered the College of Agriculture, his true dream and ambition. Thanks to his brilliant mind, he quickly became a star in graduate school. But as his popularity rose, others began assigning him their work, from writing research papers to managing their private projects, and some even went as far as having him plow the fields himself. His life shifted from rising academic star to a top-tier servant. He found himself trapped in a loop of questions. Why was he doing all this while professors reaped the credit? Eventually, he snapped, desperate for revenge, but his dopamine reserves began to run dry, pushing him toward the edge of sanity. Only one thing still gave him joy: games. Given how difficult the game was, progression felt nearly impossible, and no one had ever made it past level 19. Still chasing that feeling of accomplishment, he played round after round, without rest or boredom, until he became the first person on Earth to finish level 19 in Blood War. The moment he pressed start level 20, a blinding light exploded before him, and panic overtook him, as if his consciousness was being ripped from his body. Terrified and confused, he struggled to calm himself, trying to grasp the situation, only to find that his body had turned blue. He had become a spirit, or pure consciousness, which meant he wouldn't die even if he fell from that height. In the distant landscape stood the Tower of Life, a sign that he had entered the spirit realm inside Blood Vetras. He was then rapidly drawn toward the tomb of the Sacred Knight. Chul is overwhelmed with joy when he realizes that the character he's taken over is none other than Mukongji, the most powerful figure in the entire game, and now, he can live as an invincible king. But as he reflects on it, the thrill fades, and he sees it for what it truly is, a nightmare. Suddenly, his direction shifts violently, pulling him away from Mukongji's grave and toward a completely different destination. The moment he sees where he's headed, and who he's about to become, discomfort washes over him. He's completely unwilling to accept it, yet there it was, the character he would embody, Kratos, the Demon King. Commander Zephyros overhears the other leaders discussing Kratos, and how they now see him as weak and cowardly, especially after he canceled the long-awaited invasion, out of nothing but fear. The bloodthirsty Prince Asarath suggests they band together, behead him, and divide the throne. After all, Kratos himself became Demon King by killing the previous ruler. Hartok, the Duke of Mist, replies that perhaps Kratos isn't truly weakened, and if they attack, two of them might die, or end up gravely injured. The Ice Queen Serki adds, turning to Asarath, that if he wants to be used as a meat shield, that's his own choice. Asarath lashes out, asking her if she wants to be the first to die by his hand, while Baal, Tyrant of the Blackstone, lost in his own world, mutters that he just wants something to eat. Ignoring Baal, Asarath addresses the rest of the leaders. What if we find proof that the Demon King is truly weak? What should we do then? All the commanders respond with demonic laughter, making it clear they wouldn't hesitate to kill him the moment they sense any weakness. Zephyros hears everything but chooses not to intervene in their council. Instead, he rushes to Kratos, the Demon King, to deliver an urgent report. He explains that the army's morale has collapsed completely, that internal attacks and acts of cannibalism among the races have surged, and some soldiers have already begun deserting the demon lands. He adds that the four great rulers are furious, and now firmly believe their king is weak, and they're plotting to kill him. Kratos is deeply shaken. If the four commanders unite against him, he'll be crushed instantly. Showing any weakness now would mean certain death. Thoughts of Mukongji resurface. No one has taken over that character yet, meaning it's still just a corpse. If they invade the human world, there'll be no one to stop them. But Zephyros interrupts again, informing him that General Uga, who was monitoring the Sacred Guardian's tomb, has sent an urgent transmission. In the footage, Mukonji is shown awake and already attacking the demons with unrestrained fury. Kratos grows even more anxious. Someone clearly deranged has taken control of Mukonji, and Kratos has no desire to confront them. Perhaps the best option now is to hide and stay out of sight. But then again, even a hint of fear would spell his death at the hands of the four kings. On the other hand, if he decides to go through with invading the human world, Mukonji will annihilate him, possibly even gouge his eyes out, like he often did in the game. Kratos feels cursed, even though he's inside the world he used to love. But he regains his composure and realizes the first step must be solving the food crisis. Only then can he pacify the demons and make them more obedient. Zephyros asks him where he plans to go next, and Kratos responds that he's heading out in search of fertile land for farming. Zephyros looks at him in disgust, confused by the Demon King's tone. Kratos, puzzled by his expression, asks what's wrong, and Zephyros replies, "The arrogant, narcissistic Kratos, the one who never showed a shred of respect, couldn't possibly be speaking this way." He urges him to stop, claiming it's revolting and makes him sick. Kratos is stunned by the response, especially since this is exactly how he always acted while playing. Zephyros had only appeared once before the player's final battle against the Demon King, and without any explanation. That brief appearance made him immensely popular, as he died trying to block the player's path to the Demon King. This led many to believe he had always been fiercely loyal to Kratos, or perhaps had dreamed of serving him since ancient times, which is why his current scolding came as a complete shock. Zephyros continues his reprimand, calling this a rare and baffling failure. Never before had the Demon King lost his aura in such a way, and on top of that, his memory now seemed to rival that of a goldfish, especially after considering farming demon lands. Kratos shouts back, declaring that he is the king, and Zephyros must stop addressing him like this. But Zephyros calmly replies that he will continue to do so. He then adds that both the previous king, and Kratos himself, had once tried to cultivate this land, but the terrain is barren, the climate brutal, and nothing can grow here. Kratos responds that he knows this place is called the Land of Death, but adds with confidence that the only one who can bring it back to life is him. Deep down though, he truly hated working in agriculture, but if that was his only chance at staying alive, he'd gladly do it. He scoops up a handful of soil and places it in his mouth, tasting it to check if it's even remotely viable. Zephyros is baffled by the act and begins jotting down notes, remarking that the king has lately been behaving like a destitute man. Kratos orders him to stop writing, but Zephyros explains that this is his duty, to record the history of the demon kings, an act of great significance among demons. Though it seems his memory is deteriorating fast, Kratos lets him do as he pleases and doesn't argue further, spitting the soil out of his mouth. As expected, he finds the soil completely dead, devoid of nutrients, especially nitrogen, the most essential element for plant growth. And while nitrogen makes up 78% of the atmosphere, plants cannot absorb it directly. This is due to nitrogen's strong triple bond, which prevents it from reacting easily, hence why humans developed nitrogen fixation, which revolutionized agriculture. But here, that seems nearly impossible, especially since there's no infrastructure in place for farming. His only option is to rely on the natural method of nitrogen fixation, lightning. The immense voltage from lightning produces powerful electric currents, oxidizing nitrogen into nitrates. These nitrates then dissolve into rainwater, allowing the soil to absorb them, which plants can then utilize. Kratos, the Demon King, was known for only one primary skill, Bloodstrike, a skill that unleashes a massive wave of deadly lightning. Thus, the lightning he can generate, combined with rainfall, forms the perfect method to create fertile, plant-friendly soil. With that, Kratos orders Zephyros to step back. He's about to execute his plan, but as soon as he scratches his hand to draw blood and activate the skill, he's struck by a searing pain, wondering how this king ever endured such agony each time. Suddenly, Kratos turns around after hearing faint whispers. Behind a tree, he sees the four commanders eavesdropping, whispering among themselves that Kratos has grown weak. Even Zephyros tells him that his current appearance makes it clear he's no longer the powerful figure he once was. Kratos suspects Zephyros might be a professional assassin, trying to bait him into letting his guard down so he can finish him off, but dying now isn't an option. Kratos flares up and resolves to activate his skill. He manages to draw enough blood from his hand to trigger the technique, yet the pain in his palms is unbearable, and he struggles to hold himself together, determined not to show any weakness in front of the demons. At that moment, the four commanders step out from behind him, asking if he's feeling uncomfortable. Elsewhere, Mukonji stands at the edge of a towering cliff, his mind clouded and fragmented. Though his memories are slowly beginning to resurface, he feels as though he's always been in this place, as if he's lived through more than one lifetime. He had always followed the hand of fate that guided him, but this time, it's vanished. There's no signal, no direction, and he wonders what purpose still keeps him alive. Back with Kratos, Aseroth grins maliciously and reminds him of the Demon King's law, the strongest shall rule. Kratos panics at the words, realizing these commanders possess terrifying power, while he currently can't access any of his skills. One wrong move, and he might be killed. Aseroth notices the powerful aura surging from Kratos' body, and comments that the fight hasn't even started, yet Kratos is charging his energy so intensely that his body trembles. Then, with a confident smile, he asks if Kratos really believes he can defeat all four of them in his current state. But as he glances back, he notices the other commanders still hiding behind a tree. Shocked, he asks, "What kind of nonsense are you all pulling now?" They reply that they'll observe the battle first, and then decide whether or not to join in. Aseroth breaks into a heavy sweat, calling them backstabbing villains. But they simply answer, "We're demons. Of course we're evil." Zephyros steps in, stating that according to ancient demon tradition, any battle over the throne must be to the death. No surrender is allowed. Kratos and Aseroth both object. Still, Aseroth tries to steady himself, convincing his mind that he can win, especially now that Kratos is far weaker than he once was. Meanwhile, Kratos is paralyzed with anxiety and fear, uncertain of what to do next. He tells himself that everything up to now was just a test, to measure the power of the Demon King. He had assumed the Demon King must be strong, but clearly, he's not, at least not in the way Kratos imagined. Aseroth launches a sudden attack, and Kratos instinctively recognizes the move from the game. It's either a thrust or a slash, and there's no way he could dodge it, or so he thought. Yet somehow, his body moves on its own and avoids the strike, without him understanding how. He then notices Aseroth's foot shifting outward, and deduces the next move will be a wide slash. That exact step was something he'd seen countless times while playing. Hartok turns to Serki in astonishment, saying Kratos dodged Aseroth's attack with incredible precision, and could have easily countered by severing Aseroth's arm. Serki replies that she doesn't understand why he didn't do it either, but for now, all they can do is watch. Back to Kratos, who continues to evade Aseroth's strikes flawlessly. He mutters in disbelief that he has no idea what's going on. Every one of Aseroth's attacks is exactly like they were in the game. He remembers that the first time he faced him in-game, he always lost. He never knew how to beat him. Aseroth was too fast, with a huge attack range, making the fight brutally difficult. But after being killed by him dozens of times, he finally defeated him, for the first time, on attempt number 128. And after that, across 19 full replays of the game, he defeated him easily, without taking a single hit. Kratos lets out a wicked laugh and calmly declares, he'll win this fight, because Aseroth simply won't be able to land a single blow. Terror spreads across the faces of the other commanders as they watch the battle unfold. Kratos is effortlessly dodging Aseroth's attacks, and even mocking him while doing so. None of them can believe their eyes. Kratos is toying with Aseroth like he's too weak to even be considered a proper opponent. Furious at being mocked, Aseroth begins hurling insults non-stop. Kratos laughs mockingly as he sidesteps another strike, admitting he feels surprisingly at ease. And while that doesn't necessarily mean he can win, he realizes something crucial. This world operates under the same rules as the game. Suddenly, a message appears before him, much like those found in classic narratives, telling him he has finally grasped the world's fundamental mechanics. Because of his precise and focused dodging of Aseroth's attacks, a portion of his character's skills has been unlocked as a reward. The enemy targeting feature becomes available, and Kratos comments that it's typically used to execute a special move. He selects Aseroth as his target and activates the Bloodstrike skill. Massive tongues of flame erupt and engulf Aseroth, burning him violently. The remaining commanders are horrified by the sheer power of the attack. Kratos claims victory, cheered on by the crowds of demons who witnessed the battle. He then approaches Aseroth, now completely immobilized. Annoyed, he mutters that Aseroth should have died from Bloodstrike, a move that caused instant death in the game, but attributes his survival to his high regeneration rate, which drastically reduced the damage. Kratos unleashes the skill once more to ensure Aseroth is truly finished. Cut to the other commanders, still shaken, whispering among themselves that Kratos is attacking Aseroth with full force, to kill him painlessly. Back to Kratos, who notices Aseroth still isn't dead, unsure what to do next. Just then, a new notification appears, stating that Aseroth's clothing has been completely destroyed, triggering a new feature, Armor Inventory Inspection. When Kratos opens the inventory, he finds it contains only clothes, nothing else usable. He closes it and mutters that he must find a way to finish Aseroth off quickly. His regeneration is too high, and he could rejoin the fight any moment. A sudden idea strikes him. As long as Aseroth is still alive, he can be targeted again, meaning Bloodstrike can be used once more. With a wicked grin, Kratos laughs. I'm a genius. Now I can fill the earth with nitrogen. The scene shifts to the remaining 3 commanders, gathered together in visible discomfort. Hartok asks, how are we supposed to hand over our bathroom to him? Serki, tense, replies that whatever Kratos is requesting from them is absolutely revolting. Bal adds that he hasn't eaten in a long time, which is why he can't use the bathroom, and that even Serki doesn't use it either. Serki snaps at him, embarrassed, shouting that it's none of his business. Hartok insists he won't give up his bathroom to Kratos, no matter what, and suggests they force some low-level demons to use it instead. We cut to 2 guards standing watch over a low-ranking demon, who's pleading to be let out because he can't relieve himself while being stared at, saying their presence is stressing him out. One of the guards responds that every demon says the same thing, yet none have actually produced any waste. At that moment, Hartok enters and asks what's causing the delay. Hartok approaches the demon, who trembles in fear as he explains that he hasn't eaten anything, so he simply can't use the bathroom. The only way would be if they forced it out of him. Hartok grabs him by the neck and tells him that his idea is absolutely brilliant. He then prepares to strike, intending to kill him. But Bal intervenes just in time, grabbing his arm before the blow lands. Hartok turns to him, demanding to know the meaning of this interference. Bal calmly explains that if they force demons to expel waste unnaturally, they may lose the ability to go again, and they need to keep producing as much waste as possible. Hartok releases the demon and tells Bal that this is the first intelligent thing he's ever said. Then, unleashing a wicked aura, he suggests making the other demons eat this one's flesh. Maybe that'll help them produce something. Bal stares at him coldly, without a hint of fear in his eyes. The two then lunge at each other, but Kratos intervenes, using Bloodstrike on both of them, demanding to know what they were thinking. The impact of the skill knocks them down, leaving them sprawled on the ground, unable to rise. The scene shifts to inside the Demon King's palace, where Kratos tells them that waste lacking in nutrients is useless. They need excrement that can actually be used as fertilizer. Zephyros looks puzzled and asks, "What's fertilizer?" Kratos replies that it's a substance that feeds the earth and helps plants grow. He explains that common fertilizer components include sawdust, certain weeds, sand, eggshells, and bird droppings. He adds that sawdust and weeds can be easily gathered from ruined homes, but the real problem lies in getting eggshells and poultry droppings. An idea strikes him. He asks Zephyros to bring him a map of their territory. When Kratos looks at it, he remarks that it's identical to the game's map, which means that if they head to the demonic seagull colony, they'll find an overwhelming number of gulls there. He explains that during his in-game explorations, he saw them everywhere in the fields, indicating they feed well in the human lands. The gulls then return to their nests to lay eggs and leave behind their droppings. Zephyros, visibly confused, asks if Kratos really plans to gather seagull poop and eggs. Kratos laughs and replies, "Sharp as always. That's exactly the plan." Zephyros then warns him that the place those gulls inhabit is called the Cliff of No Return. It earned its name because the land there crumbles easily, making it impossible to get a foothold. If anything falls, the waves drag it away. Kratos replies that he's well aware, and continues thinking to himself that this zone had always been off limits in the game, inaccessible due to system restrictions. But now, he can finally climb those mountains. The scene shifts to the Cliff of No Return, where Kratos stands with the commanders, none of them aware of what's going through his mind. For generations, demons tried to hunt seagulls there, but each attempt ended in death, as they slipped off the cliffs and were swallowed by the raging sea. Kratos then informs them that he will climb to the top and throw down bags filled with seagull eggs and droppings. They just need to catch them carefully and make sure nothing falls into the sea. With a wicked grin, he tells them, "If this works, you'll feast like kings." Kratos heads toward the mountain, recalling how, on his 13th run of the game, he desperately tried to climb this very place. As he runs, he adds that he must have attempted it hundreds of times, only to die each and every time. Then, he leaps off the cliff, remembering that he did eventually succeed. He'd pulled it off by exploiting a glitch in the game. He opens his equipment inventory and strips off all his clothing. The commanders are baffled, unable to understand what he's planning. But when they see him entering the mountain completely naked, their expressions twist with visible disgust. Kratos then turns his body around. Serki quickly averts her gaze, not wanting to see him exposed, but he soon opens his inventory again and puts his clothes back on. Then, he spins once more, undresses, spins again, and redresses, repeating this over and over until he finally reaches the top. Standing confidently at the summit, he announces that he'd used this trick before, and was sure it would work again here. This world still allows him to open the gear window and manipulate it freely, which enabled his success. Zephyros is stunned by what just happened, while Baal beams with joy, saying that Kratos promised he'd bring them food, and that's why he's decided to climb up and help. Baal sprints ahead, copying Kratos' every move, as Zephyros tries in vain to stop him. Baal dashes toward the edge, jumps, and mimics everything Kratos did, but Kratos yells at him not to do that at all. The rocks beneath Baal give way, and he begins to fall. Kratos grabs his hand just in time, stopping him from plunging into the sea. But he can't hold on for long. Baal is far too heavy. Doubt creeps in. Why is he even trying to save him? After all, Baal is one of the 4 commanders. Maybe it would be better if he just let go. So why did his body move on its own to catch him? Then, he remembers what happened before entering the game, when one of his classmates broke down in tears, saying the professor wouldn't let him submit his paper, wanting to keep him a servant forever. The boy begged him to speak to the professor, since he was the only one the professor liked and listened to. Through his tears, he insisted that the professor respected Kratos, and might actually listen to him. Kratos recalls how the student was younger than him, always by his side, and how he really could have helped, since he was essentially servant number 2 in the professor's eyes. But he refused to help, telling the boy it was his problem to deal with. The real reason he refused was fear of being cast aside. But now, he realizes he should have done whatever it took to help that boy. If he'd pushed himself harder, gone beyond his limits, maybe that boy could have cried from joy instead of pain. With a sharp grunt, Kratos strains and pulls Baal upward, his arm nearly breaking from the weight. But at last, he manages to haul him up to the top of the mountain. He then climbs up himself, clutching his throbbing arm in pain. Baal looks at him and says that Kratos saved him and got hurt doing it, even though he had no real reason to. He asks, why? Kratos replies, gripping his hand, that abandoning someone who follows you, only to regret it later, hurts far more. Baal is deeply moved by the words, tears welling in his eyes. Kratos thinks of the boy and quietly tells himself he should have done the same for him, and offers a sincere apology. A new message appears, stating that although his body has not yet fully adapted to that of the Demon King, he has already pushed himself to the limit. As a result of what he had done, Kratos earned the genuine gratitude of Commander Baal, and Kratos couldn't believe just how deeply the moment had affected him. Because of this achievement, a new system was activated, a reward system for the Demon King's army. When his army is happy, Kratos gains a large number of happiness points. Kratos is baffled by the sudden appearance of this new system. He stares at the system window explaining, happiness points, vaguely remembering they were used to get discounts, like buying ice cream maybe. But there's probably no one selling ice cream in a place like this. He's even more shocked when the system replies, telling him the points can be spent on upgrades and perks. For instance, he currently has access to only 20% of the Demon King Kratos' full power, and the system urges him to try raising it to 100%. Kratos agrees and decides to test the system by attempting to increase his stamina by 10 levels. But the system notifies him that doing so requires 50 happiness points. He also learns that he can use points to upgrade skills. For example, upgrading Bloodstrike would cost 250 happiness points. Kratos can't act just yet, but if the farming plan succeeds, he could earn tons of points, making him far stronger and increasing his odds of survival. Plus, the feeling of being genuinely thanked by someone, that's something he's starting to truly appreciate. Watching him closely is Baal, who now sees, based on Kratos' expression, that if he dares disobey him, Kratos might tear him apart. He owes him his life, and there's no way this demon saved him for free. Kratos calls down to the 4 commanders, informing them he's placing the waste inside a large eggshell and tossing it down from above. He urges them to catch it carefully, and as he tosses it, the commanders begin to wonder how much more of this they can endure. But Kratos keeps flinging down eggshells filled with waste, reminding them that the first step in manual industry is preparing the raw materials, which include seagull eggshells, excrement, beech tree ash, and prepping the soil. Then, everything is ground and mixed together. Kratos asks Circe to grind and mix all the components. She's stunned, and asks if he really means for her to do that. He replies, "She has plenty of arms. Surely she can put them to use." Furious, Circe screams at him, demanding how the Ice Queen Circe could possibly use her noble arms to mix excrement. Kratos replies with a terrifying tone that since she insists, he'll give her an easier task. He points toward Aseroth, telling her she could just stand there, next to him, and do nothing but stay still. The moment she hears this, Circe immediately starts grinding and mixing the ingredients, saying nothing, but unleashing all her fury on the work itself. Kratos sighs, thinking he was genuinely scared for a second. These commanders' tempers are not to be underestimated, and he must never lower his guard around them. Still, he is the great demon king Kratos, and he'll continue to push forward with courage and strength until he achieves his goals. The next step in fertilizer prep is adding water. Kratos instructs Hartok to fill the air with mist. Hartok groans that the smell will be unbearable, and the humidity will make things worse. Why even do this? Kratos cuts him off, pointing to Aseroth, still hanging like a kebab skewer, and warns Hartok he might be next. Instantly, without another word, Hartok begins spreading mist and increasing the surrounding humidity. Kratos turns to Commander Baal and asks if the humidity is now sufficient. Baal replies that the soil has indeed softened after being soaked with water, just as expected. The third step, then, is to place the fertilizer in a dry location and cover it with a blanket made of seagull feathers. But there's a current issue standing in their way. Producing even a small amount of fertilizer takes an extremely long time, and to create enough to cover this vast area, Kratos will have no choice but to rally a large number of demons to assist. Still, something's bothering him, and he decides to take action now, exercising his authority as Demon King. In one of the humble demon homes, a father sits by his sick daughter's bed. When she calls for him, he gently asks what she needs. His daughter, Flute, pale and frail, asks him to eat her, since both of them are starving and too weak to go on. The father responds in anguish, begging her not to speak such nonsense again. But Flute tells him that her mother misses her dearly. She remembers the time a monstrous demon attacked her and was about to devour her. When her mother stood between them to shield her, she gave Flute one last sorrowful look, as if to say goodbye. That was the last time Flute ever saw her, devoured right before her eyes. Her father tells her that without her presence, he wouldn't have had the strength to go on. Their moment is abruptly interrupted as Demon King Kratos enters the house, shocking the father into screaming, unsure of what's happening. Kratos states that if he has the energy to scream, then he still has strength left, and orders his soldiers to seize him. The terrified father pleads that if he's taken away, his daughter Flute will be left defenseless. Higher-ranked demons might exploit the situation and devour her. Kratos shows no concern, and takes the father despite the cries of both Flute and her father. He then asks Zephyros how many demons have been gathered so far. Zephyros answers that they've rounded up 20 so far. 30 more remain. Kratos glances back, and sees Flute collapsed in tears at her doorstep, devastated by her father's sudden capture. The sight stirs a memory from the game, when the player encounters this same child, Flute, and one of their missions is to slaughter every demon in the area, including her. Kratos leaves the scene and orders his forces to cease all illegal acts, especially the consumption of their own kind. He tells Zephyros to gather the rest of the demons and instructs them to begin producing fertilizer immediately. His only thought is that he is the Demon King, the tyrant of this land, and he will do whatever it takes to reach his goal. A true leader chooses which sacrifices must be made, and makes them without hesitation. The demons begin making fertilizer, though they feel it's a complete waste of their energy. To them, farming is a pointless and pathetic endeavor, but fear keeps them silent, lest the Demon King sever their heads. One of them remarks that they're doomed either way. Even if the land somehow becomes fertile, what exactly can they grow here? They have nothing to plant. Kratos overhears this, and asks if they're really that curious about what he intends to plant. He tells the skeptic to follow him if he wants to find out. Kratos remembers the purple flower he saw when he turned to spot the 4 commanders, spying on him during his use of Bloodstrike, and that flower has now become their farming target. The demon farmer asks if that's the intended crop, and Kratos confirms it is. He explains that these are the plant's roots, and that Baal and several farming squads retrieved them from multiple locations. The farmer apologetically replies that the roots of this plant are likely inedible. Consuming them causes severe stomach pain and can be fatal. Kratos replies that unfortunately, there's nothing else left on this land worth chewing, and odds are, they've just completed the experiment to see if this plant is edible. The farmer looks puzzled by Kratos' words and asks what experiment he's referring to. Kratos responds in a chilling tone. His daughter is eating the plant right now. The father is stunned, unable to believe what he's hearing, and sprints toward his home. Not understanding why the Demon King would do such a thing to his innocent daughter, he prays with all his heart that she hasn't eaten it. But as soon as he bursts through the door, shouting at Flute not to eat it, he's shocked by the sight before him. Flute sits calmly, eating the plant as if it were an ordinary meal, with no pain, just genuine fullness. He nervously asks his daughter if she's truly okay. Flute responds innocently, Commander Zephyros and Commander Bal brought her the food yesterday, fed it to her, and she felt perfectly fine. Krydos arrives at that moment and asks the father if he believes him now. He explains that long ago, the people of a certain land found a way to make this poisonous plant edible. They learned how to cultivate it and solved their hunger crisis with it. That plant is now known as the potato. Flute tells Krydos she can't believe someone like him would show such kindness to a lowly creature like her, and thanks him from the bottom of her heart. Immediately, a notification appears to Krydos. A portion of his demonic army has experienced joy after eating, and thus, his happiness points have risen for the first time. Krydos feels a rush of happiness himself, realizing that being the Demon King doesn't mean he always has to be serious. So he replies to Flute in a mockingly cold tone that contrasts with his true feelings. A pathetic little thing like you should eat, grow taller, and get healthy. Flute shudders in fear, and both Bal and Zephyros flinch as well, convinced Krydos is fattening her up to devour her later. He is, after all, an evil demon king. In the deep heart of the demon kingdom, known as Shavin de Antor, this region is divided into 5 zones, with Shavin de Antor lying at the very core. It endures a frozen night and a scorching daytime heat, a climate much like the Andes highlands. In the past, the people of those highlands lacked food and were driven to eat wild, poisonous potatoes. But thanks to humanity's ability to transform even toxic substances into edible, flavorful meals, not all of them perished. They discovered how to neutralize the poison. And so, Demon King Krydos carries on his farming mission, securing sustainable food for the demons and tackling the hunger crisis. A farmer informs him the tubers are now in place. Krydos commands Bal to begin crushing them at once, and Bal doesn't hesitate for a second. He starts stomping on the tubers, following the established plan. Freeze them at night, then use Bal's force in the morning to crush them, allowing the poison in the potatoes to break down and evaporate. The potatoes are gathered, frozen, then thawed, tasted, and finally steamed, a process repeated over and over, until the potatoes dry out and can be stored before cooking. Thus, the chuño process is completed, turning wild potatoes into something edible. Krydos orders Zephyros to gather the fertilizer teams, because mealtime has arrived. The farmers line up, and Krydos tells them that since there aren't many tubers, each of them can only take 2 pieces. Zephyros replies that there's still a large stockpile of potatoes left, and asks if they could make more. Krydos answers that he doubts the remaining amount is enough, especially since they're not yet producing enough to feed an entire army of demons. That's why they must plant the remaining potatoes, and multiply them 1,000-fold. The farmers glance at their plates, murmuring that this is the poisonous part of the plant. They wonder if it's truly safe to eat, recalling that many of their relatives died from consuming it in the past. Flute's father responds that the Demon King has altered the plant, making it safe now, and that his own daughter, Flute, ate it without harm. One farmer objects, asking him to just look at the Demon King's face and expression. Does that look like the face of someone giving us food? He looks like he's waiting for us to eat, then drop dead one after another. But Flute's father interrupts, takes a bite of the potato Krydos provided, and swallows it as the other farmers watch him anxiously, waiting to see if he'll be poisoned. But nothing bad happens. In fact, his eyes well up with tears of joy, and he salutes the Demon King for what he's done for them. After seeing someone eat the wild potatoes safely, the entire farming team begins devouring the chuño with excitement. They cheer for Krydos, praise him, and thank him for the food, even chanting a song that honors him as their king. Krydos listens seriously, but deep down, he doesn't like the chant. They'll need a new one eventually. Zephyros also notices Krydos' expression, one of quiet confidence. He now truly believes Krydos may be able to provide real food in this barren land, and maybe even end the hunger-driven suffering. Due to the farmers' joy after their long struggle, Krydos' happiness points rise by 20. Krydos is overwhelmed. 20 points is no small amount, and he genuinely feels stronger already. He opens his system window, checks his stats, and considers which skill to invest in next, but decides to keep accumulating points for now. Then, he plans to split the fertilizer team from the potato gathering team, but Zephyros interrupts him, calling out to the farmers. He orders them to return to their villages once their tasks are done, and spread the word. It's now possible to grow edible food on this land, and those who bring back wild potatoes will receive food vouchers that can be exchanged for chuño. Krydos is impressed by Zephyros' thinking. Though he's definitely annoying, he's clearly the most useful among the commanders, especially since the village demons will now search for wild potatoes as hard as they can, for Krydos' sake. Meanwhile, the other commanders will keep producing edible chuño, and the rest will continue making fertilizer for cultivation. Krydos moves the pole where Asarath is still hanging and gives instructions to the farmers to place it in a spot ideal for lightning generation. Then, he activates Bloodstrike to summon lightning and generate the nitrogen needed for fertile soil. After finally producing enough fertilizer, it's time for the next step, spreading it widely across the land. But the area is vast, an enormous space for farmers surviving on just a few balls of chuño, making the task daunting. Asarath snarls at Krydos, calling him disgusting and asking him to just kill him already. Krydos zaps him with lightning and resumes thinking. What he now needs is a great demon commander, someone who performs well even when starving, even without rest, and can work for hours. So he has no choice left but to turn to that individual. Back in the palace, Krydos asks Zephyros whether he really sent a request for backup from the Lords of the Stars. Zephyros confirms he did. He requested a halt to all attacks, and asked for as many troops as possible to help with farming. However, even though messengers were sent to all 4-star commanders overseeing the regions, no response has come back yet. Krydos considers the possibility that the messengers who were sent out may have collapsed and died of hunger on the way. Even so, he knows they desperately need this plan to succeed, because spreading fertilizer over such a vast expanse will be incredibly difficult. Meanwhile, In the Demon Lands, specifically in the first star zone, deep within the Cliff of the Dead, a servant arrives before the region's ruler to report that, according to scout reports, the Demon King has officially begun farming. He adds that it's likely they've already started producing food. The ruler responds that Krytos is doing all of this out of fear, because he knows the ruler's power has grown, and demon deaths have sharply increased. That's why Krytos stopped the war, to reduce the number of demon casualties. He also began cutting back on the number dying from starvation, all because he fears the first Star Lord, Saruthal. Saruthal asks his servant whether he handled the 30 messengers sent to the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th star zones. The servant replies that he eliminated all of them, ensuring the other region lords know nothing about the war's end or the farming project. Saruthal replies coldly that all demons should starve, only then can they serve as food for him and his army. Then he'll kill Krytos, and become the next demon king. He orders his servant Vecamir to destroy every trace of Krytos' agricultural effort. Vecamir arrives in Krytos' lands and sees Asarath, remarking that Krytos is cruel enough to leave him as a living corpse, just to serve as a warning to others. He tells Asarath not to worry, as Lord Saruthal is impressed by his aggression, and plans to recruit him once Krytos is eliminated. Vecamir then summons his ghostly spirits, and orders them to destroy everything, leaving nothing usable behind. One of the spirits points out the human fertilizer the scouts had mentioned earlier. Vecamir orders them to gather it and scatter it everywhere. He commands them to spread it evenly across the land, just in case Krytos tries to recollect it. It must be deeply mixed into the soil. He warns them not to leave even a single particle exposed, and to bury it deep underground. Then Vecamir lets out a wicked laugh, but Asarath stares at him in disbelief, because he remembers a conversation between Krytos and Zephyros about how essential it was to grind the fertilizer thoroughly and bury it deep into the soil, that it was an incredibly difficult task, one the farming team couldn't possibly do alone, but now, they won't need to. Vecamir's ghost army has just done all the work for them, thinking they were destroying it. The ghosts begin digging, burying the fertilizer deep into the ground, whispering among themselves that if Krytos were to find even a single chunk of fertilizer, he could turn this whole region into fertile farmland. One ghost turns to another, remarking that his enthusiasm today is unusual, like he's actually working hard this time. The other ghost replies, genuinely agreeing, saying he feels proud looking at everything they've accomplished, finally doing something that actually matters. That infectious excitement spreads to the rest of the ghosts, who resume their work with renewed passion. They become so immersed in their task that they don't even notice the sunrise, as the sun's rays begin to burn them. They find themselves frozen in place, unable to escape. But before they vanish, they say they're at peace with this ending, because they finally did something worthwhile. Vecamir arrives moments later, heartbroken at their sacrifice, mourning their courageous deaths. He tells them they've done their part, and now, he says he can't wait to see Krytos' reaction. The scene shifts to the potato storage room. Krytos and Zephyros stand inside, and Krytos remarks that plowing the fields took far longer than expected, and that the potatoes before them are currently dormant. Zephyros is confused, prompting Krytos to explain that dormant means the potatoes won't sprout. They're currently useless for farming. He compares it to a potato peacefully asleep underground, only to be yanked out suddenly by some mischievous hand, causing the poor thing to faint from shock, leaving it unable to reproduce. Krytos thinks aloud, saying that the dormancy period would end more quickly if they left the potatoes for 2 or 3 weeks at 4 degrees Celsius, then move them to a warm, dark place. He adds that he'd ask Circe to use her ice magic, but she's in a foul mood, and Hartok seems to be scheming as well. If both turn on him at once, he won't be able to handle it, so he needs a backup plan. He says he had the workers doing squats to try and raise the room's temperature to 23 degrees Celsius, but they exhausted themselves quickly, and the plan failed. Krytos tells Zephyros they're heading to the farm now. He's going to do what he can. At the very least, he wants to mix nitrogen into the soil. But the moment they arrive, Krytos is stunned by what he sees. The fertilizer has been completely blended into the soil, filling the entire area with an overpowering stench. In complete awe, Krytos says a miracle has occurred. The land is now ready for planting. Watching Krytos' amazement, Vecamir feels a rush of pride, convinced their sabotage worked flawlessly. But suddenly, Bal appears behind him. He grabs Vecamir by the collar, drags him over to Krytos, and reveals that he had been hiding. Krytos is shocked to see him, and notes that Vecamir is one of the leaders of the Cliff of the Dead. He wonders if he came willingly after hearing about the call for reinforcements. He asks Vecamir why he's really here, but Vecamir freezes in fear. Before he can utter a word, Krytos lands a punch straight to his face. Zephyros asks Krytos why he punched Vecamir before even giving him a chance to explain. Krytos replies that he had a feeling Vecamir was hiding something, and sometimes, hitting first is the fastest way to get someone to confess. Vecamir responds that such behavior is exactly what he expects from the Demon King, but he won't talk so easily. Krytos starts beating him continuously while Bal holds him down, giving Krytos full freedom to unleash his blows. Krytos keeps hitting him until he grows tired, then uses his happiness points to increase his stamina, just so he can keep going. Eventually, Vecamir breaks and admits he was sent to sabotage Krytos' farm. The scene shifts to the Demon King's palace, where Krytos tells Zephyros that it was Saruthal who rejected the support request. He adds that he understands Saruthal's motives. After all, the more demons starve, the stronger Saruthal becomes. Zephyros replies that Saruthal's actions are basically an act of rebellion, and this could be Krytos' chance to defeat the first Star Lord and send a clear message to the rest of the demon realm. Krytos considers this and thinks to himself, if he lets them get away with what they've done, they'll remain a constant threat to his farming project. He'll need a proper plan to deal with them. Zephyros adds that the real issue now is how to defeat Saruthal, since he has the ability to shift into a ghost-like form. Krytos says that in the game, Saruthal could be found all throughout the Cliff of the Dead, a naturally confusing area, and he'd turned the entire fight into a game of hide-and-seek. But if the problem is luring out the plague, then the only solution is to bait him out of his nest. We then cut to Flute, the young girl, who has wandered from her home and made her way to the farm, where Asarath remains. As she gets too close, he growls and asks why she's here, and what's with the way she's looking at him. She gently tells him she heard his sacrifice was the reason they got food, and she bows to thank him from the bottom of her heart. Asarath flares up, screaming that she's mocking him, and threatens to kill her to free himself. The frightened girl runs away, crying. He snarls that the moment he's free, he's going straight to kill Krytos, who caused all of this. But suddenly, he hears Kratos' voice in the distance. Kratos appears, dragging Vecamir, tied to a wooden pole just like Asarath, while dancing and clapping with the workers. Asarath is stunned to see someone else also being used as a lightning rod. Filled with hope, he smiles and says he's finally going to be freed. No way they'll keep him hanging like this all day now. Kratos approaches Asarath and places Vecamir beside him, then uses Bloodstrike on both of them at once. Only then does Asarath realize he completely misunderstood. Kratos didn't come to free him, he just brought someone else to hang up next to him. The scene then cuts to Saruthal, watching as his loyal servant Vecamir is tortured by Kratos, and his fury begins to boil.